afternoon, Honorable Chair. I rise to report that a quorum does exist for the Standing Committee of Public Enterprises to commence business.
Thank you, Clerk. It has been reported that a quorum does exist for the Standing Committee on Public Enterprise to commence business. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor, please say no. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to seize this opportunity to welcome you and the team. And we are sorry for the delay, since our schedule today is so tight. We have to adjust to make sure that we bring you because of the excuses you made. Based on that, most of the time has been lost. But I think today is consideration, and before we go further, let us start introducing, because more of our members are coming. It was different from the first engagement where you have very few of us here. Starting with myself, I am Honorable Lamin J. Sane, National Assembly Member for Burkama South constituency, Chairman of this committee.
Honorable Ibrahim J. Member for Sando and member for this committee.
Lamin Chise, member for Kyoga's constituency.
Honorable Amadi Jiwa, Solution Salah constituency.
Good afternoon, once again.
Good afternoon, Pamajai Lau, Deputy Auditor General 1.
Good afternoon, Hussein Mungom, Chairman of Gambia International Airlines.
Good afternoon, I'm T.M. Sawane, Secretary to the Board, DIA. Good afternoon, my name is Waibu Keta, Finance Director, DIA.
Good afternoon, my name is Karan Managing Director, DIA.
Good afternoon, I am the President, Director for DIA.
Good afternoon, my name is Mr. Abdullah Bob, Senior Cargo Manager, DIA.
Good afternoon, my name is Bakari Drame, Senior Finance Manager, DIA.
Good afternoon, my name is Lamin Diata, the Managing Partner of our Associate External Auditors.
Good afternoon, I'm Omar K. Diallo, Audit Partner of our Associate External Auditors.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Mr. Chairman. I just want to inform you and the team that as part of our ground rule, we put our mobiles on silent during the proceedings. And again, I want to inform you, those who are on the oaths still, we are going to maintain them. But do you have any additional? Because this is going to be the consideration, whether you have any other additional guy who hasn't taken the oath, so that we can administer the oath. Okay. Thank you, honorable members. We can start the business. Anybody has a question?
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Jiba.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Managing Director, Board, and other staff. Yeah. I want to ask questions on the impress. As alluded here, we've seen that observations were made by the auditors that impress transactions were not retired, and as per the advice, it says the impress transactions should not exceed the 7 days timeline for the retirement, and which it has exceeded on that, and it was not properly constituted. So we are asking, the impress reconciliation variance is about 842 million plus. This was the difference between the GL. Sorry, $842,000 is the difference between the GL balance of 903,000 an unretired impress balance of 61,000 raised by the internal auditors. We want to ask whoever will answer, is there any impress approval retirement procedures? If it is, we want to hear from you on that line.
Actually, what management does is that once you get an impress, when you type through receipts, there's a balance, then you can pay the balance to the cashier, then the receipt from the cashier plus the receipts on week expenditures were made, then you retire. But actually, there is no specific time duration when it should be retired. But we know that life is a learning curve. Now we have seen that this is something that should be done within 7 days, and you can be rest assured the management has started to implement that starting this January. And may I also add that most of these impress in the books, these are long-standing impress for so many years. These things have gone far back as maybe 5 or maybe very close to 10 years. So we all know, accountants are here. Sometimes financial records after 6 years are very difficult to manage. So the amount quoted
any lapses on that. If there was any relaxation from the management or finance department, that shouldn't be done. Because you have a regulation that stated that it has to be reported when you come. If it is not reported within a due time, the interest will be deducted from your monthly take home.
Honorable, we agree. We agree, and then we have taken note. Yes. Before you, Chairman, before you come, I also want a follow-up in connection to this particular inquest. And you, in all the responses, you laid emphasis on history that has been continuing. Now, because you have inherited a lot of inquests, and as I vividly had the finance director, you are saying a lot of effort has been done. If you look at the amount from 2017 and currently, there is significant improvement. Notwithstanding, one thing I know for sure, if it is not clear, this will continue to appear. And the way you are going to be portrayed internationally, this will create a kind of problem. Because the way, I don't think any donor agency is their thematic area to partner with the aviation if these things keep on appearing. So as I'm speaking, what strategy are in place to completely do away with this, to have a fresh pay? And next, from that point, we start fully implementing the actual regulation done by the Ministry of Finance. Yes.
Honorable Chair and Honorable Member, I think part of the response you're getting about history, we as a board, when we first saw this, reacted the same way that you reacted. So what we did was we asked the audit committee to get a full breakdown of these interest balances to carry out an analysis, because it's historical, but this was done alongside several other historical balances, interagency historical balances that are both debit and credit. And what we are trying to do is for each and every one of them gain satisfaction that we are in a position to eliminate them from the books and continue from there. But at that point, there is a board resolution to act the same way that you have described. There is a I think first let me say we are not at all worried about the lapse in time. In fact, we appreciate the fact that you have accommodated us by shifting your schedule and taking us today. So we understand fully, and it's not an inconvenience. We are grateful for that. Now, just as a general precursor to responding to the procurement question, I think we if you look at our board minutes again, when we sat down as a board, we ensured that all the government regulations, from the Finance Act to the State-Owned Enterprises Act to the Gambia Procurement Authority Act, all the legislative instruments regulating state-owned enterprises are in place within GIA, and we monitor them. However, what we have also done as a board we need to make a decision. And we will ask for the right documentation and have it in place. Now, naturally, in that context, when the auditors come, what they then see is the absence of all the prerequisites by the GPPA. And they then draw our attention as a board to say, look, there are these gaps. Now, if any of them are ones that we are not aware of, then we will react. If there are ones that we are aware of, then we will say, no, we understand, but we are aware these were the circumstances. And I'm happy to say that all the ones that are reported here fall in that category. But in the interest of transparency and good governance, it is good for the auditors to have their independence to state it.
I have a follow-up question to that. Don't you think it's a bit don't you think it's a bit risky with regards to let's say trying to create that financial and freedom, like the financial environment for the management to be able to, let's say, do their day-to-day work, pertaining to what you've just said? Don't you think it might create some financial imbalances or mistaking of financial processes?
No, because I mean, this board is very fortunate in the sense that we have a multitude of skills in the board and a strong understanding of the operation. I used to be Director of Finance of GIA 30 years ago. So I'm quite familiar with what is urgent and what is not urgent. So the Managing Director doesn't have a free hand necessarily. There are limits to what he can do. But what as a board we do is that we do have an audit and governance committee whose role it is at every board meeting to review exceptional decisions. These are not routine decisions, these are exceptional decisions. If it were a significant procurement of value, then they will have to go through the routine because it is planned and anticipated. So the way we mitigate that risk is we have a budget that we peer approve at the beginning of the year. So anything he says to me or in my absence another board member, we can reference it to the budget to know that yes, this is something that should happen. However, it is urgent. When we had planned to have it, it needs to be quicker and we will give authorization. And as I say, unfortunately, in the interest of transparency, auditors will pick that because they are the exception rather than the norm. And then they draw your attention, our attention as a board. So prior to signing the accounts, we will satisfy ourselves that this decision was made properly. But that is not to say that we are not managing to be compliant with GPPA rules. It's just understanding that the operating environment that they face, particularly in 2020 really, during the COVID pandemic, where he did not have the benefit of a full staff complement. It was a very skinny office. I think the MD and a few staff working. So the understanding was that we will allow them the ability to continue to operate because these are unusual times. Now, we have the benefit of hindsight. We are now considering it when everything is normal. So it will even look more abnormal now than it would otherwise have done. But I take your point that there is a need to manage any risks. And in the current environment, this same situation will not arise.
All right, Mr. Chair, there's a follow-up question to that. GIA has a contract committee, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. They have a procedure guidelines as per the awarding of contracts, isn't it? Good. But with all that, I believe the Gambia Public Procurement Act, supersedes all those, internal, control issues with respect to the contracts you have, isn't it?
Yeah,
Good. Is there any exception as far as emergency issues are concerned in the Gambia Public Procurement Act when it comes to the award of contracts? And if there are, what are some of those exceptions?
Yes. Yes. As the Honorable Chairman was saying, you look at the nature of our industry. We are operating in a very peculiar industry. For example, sometimes, as he rightly put it up, we have to act to avoid sometimes what we call natural disaster. You see, the breakdown of a single massing at the airport can make the entire airport dysfunctional. So when things of that nature come, you cannot wait to go through GPPA approval to get that massing in place so that the airport will continue to be functional. These are the exceptional circumstances when definitely the company is going to buy, it's regarding GPPA. But after, we do the paperwork, but we cannot wait for GPPA because it's like that moment that massing is down, you don't have an airport.
Okay, thank you.
What I'm trying to put across is that let us not give leverage to the avoidance of the procurement procedures. Procurement procedures should be strictly followed. These are very important to ensure that we have effective financial control over public institutions. So if on emergency basis, for instance, the Mr. Chia has talked about the maintenance of aircraft, for instance. When you get to the report, the financial statement, which has talked about the maintenance of aircraft and the allowances for the crew, you look at how huge that fund is. If I can cite, let me go through this. That has been a huge amount of fund. If that huge amount of fund cannot actually go through procurement procedures because it's an emergency, this could entertain fraud. Yes, let me quickly have a look at this. I think revenue.
Yeah, you can go on then.
Can I address him on
Actually, the state aircraft was only actually the responsibility of State House at the time. For us, whenever we pre-finance, we get our money back from State House. So it's like this was not an expenditure line for Gambia International Airlines. We only facilitate their operations, and we recover our money from them. That was all. It wasn't an expenditure line for GIA.
This wasn't an expenditure line for GIA, so you pre-finance?
And then they give back our money. Not on all occasions, though.
So but is there any receivable with respect to this activity?
This figure is a receivable balance in our books. Okay. Because what happens is, as I said, usually we receive these requests from State House to do certain activities for them with regards to the state aircraft. So once we do it, and then we request back from them what we've spent. So sometimes the request, they don't pay in full, because we all know what happens in the previous government. So they don't pay in full, and this is something that we don't just want to write off because it relates to government. So we leave it in our books, and then try to get the money from State House.
Again, Honorable Chair, let me help and break this down a bit simpler. When we inherited this board, we were confronted with this because you're looking at the receivables now, but when you go to the other side, payables, you will see a central bank loan of 65 million, you will see a Gambia Ports Authority loan, you will see a Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation loan. These were all presidential directives for this organization to pay for these. At one point, GIA's board was made up of the Inspector General of Police, the head of NIA, Secretary to Cabinet. I mean, everybody who serves the needs of the president to run the aircraft. So now we're in a situation where we have inherited all these amounts. And what we have done, again as a board, we have made a resolution that there needs to be an interagency reconciliation. Because the central bank is not asking GIA to pay them for this money. Nor is anybody else asking. Because at the back of their minds, they know how the decision was made. But the numbers don't know that. So the numbers will stay there. So now the question is, where do we find the legal mandate to properly tidy this up? And I'm sure you understand, it's not particularly easy. So as a board, we have been trying. That is why we have reinstated all the payables for which there has been no demand for over 7 years now. Similarly, we will get to this probably in the next set of accounts to tidy it up. But it's going to take us time because the current managing director of Social Security does not know anything about this. He sees it in his books, he doesn't understand. Some of these guys maybe understand some of it, but there are some who don't. There are a lot of items like this that we have already tidied up, but what we don't also want to do as a board is to have you ask me, why did you write off 69 million? So I want to go through the process, associate the Ministry of Finance, associate the Ministry of Works, and possibly associate the President's office for a decision to be made. Because we cannot keep carrying this and having a legitimate question from you. Because when you see it, you must ask, 69 million, it's a lot of money. But the reality is that 69 million was spent and the central bank was asked to compensate 69 million to them. Now, the books can only show it this way, that the central bank is owed because in their minds they gave them a loan. In their minds they gave the president a loan by spending on his aircraft. So the question now is, for us and yourselves, we need to tidy it up. The question is, how do we do that legally in a way that protects us? Because this is not our expenditure, we inherited it. But we have to tidy it up one way or the other. And that's the dilemma we face. I think there is a board resolution for there to be an interagency. In fact, not a board resolution, this committee asked for an interagency conversation to tidy this up.
Minister of Finance are coordinating that.
And the Minister of Finance, as far as I'm aware, are trying to facilitate that. But somehow, this has to be, because it's not by coincidence that the 69 million they have spent and they owe the central bank 69 million. You know, it's not by coincidence that for maybe the Hajj, you owe Social Security, you know, they were asked to pay for things. And Social Security, their accounting says we've loaned it to GIA. GIA recorded as a creditor. But the actual cost went to buy Hajj tickets, I believe, from what we were told us. So I have sympathy for the question you are asking, but we are in exactly the position you are in. The question is, how do we tidy up? The person who knows why all of this happened is not in our midst. We can't ask the question. So all of us have to find legal administrative instruments to deal with it.
In fact, I can give an example. At one point during the AU summit in the Gambia, I think it was around 2006. So Gamcel was asked to provide 15 million to GIA to buy a particular, airport machine equipment. So directive was given to Gamcel to get money to GIA. So not GIA necessarily asking money from Gamcel. So now when the money was provided, the then management also bought the equipment, and now Gamcel is saying that it's a loan. But there was no paperwork at the time when Gamcel was being instructed to provide the money to GIA. So these are some of the things that were happening.
I mean, maybe the auditors can also throw their own understanding of this dilemma. Maybe they've seen it somewhere else. I'm not sure.
What I want to know is some of these things still happening. Are you getting loans to government on the basis of maintenance of aircraft?
Oh, no. I mean, when instructions come from anywhere now, they are routed via the board, and we look at it. I mean, we've had arguments with PMO on staff appointments, for example, where we have told them, no, this is the remit of the board. You cannot deal with it. So that will not happen, definitely. However, the history has to be tidied up.
Mr. Chairman, there's another follow-up to your previous statement regarding the annual budget of the GIA and some of the unforeseen circumstances that come along, especially in connection to the maintenance of the cargo, which the MD emphasized. Without immediate attention, the whole country can be stranded somewhere. Some of these things you might not be able to calculate the type of eventualities that may come along. How prepared are you if certain things occur? Are you factoring these things on the contingency in terms of budgeting, or how do you manage with these things? And some of them are capital intense, huh?
They have a contingency budget, the airline does. But what they try and do is they budget relative to what they can afford. You know, in an ideal world, they would have had more equipment at the airport. They would have had more, ground handling equipment at the airport. But they don't. So they are managing under very difficult circumstances. I'll give you a classic example. I think it was last year or the year before, they went and bought a bus. A bus to transfer passengers from the aircraft to the terminal, because the bus they had was very small. It was doing 10 trips to get people off the aircraft. People were complaining. The airlines were complaining, citizens were complaining. So the MD made a decision that, look, let me get a bus that is adequate, that only does 2 trips to clear everybody off the aircraft. Now, it was so urgent that they needed to make a decision. So they consulted to say, look, we have a good deal, we need to go and purchase this. And we have anticipated handling income likely to come in. Air France will come. At the time, they were going to do 3 flights a week. But our prediction was they will do 7 days a week later. So anticipatively, they went and bought the bus. And now Air France is coming 7 days a week. They're clearing the passengers very fast. It's working smoothly. Now, with hindsight, when you look at such a decision, it might look very unusual. But if they did not make that decision, well, Air France probably wouldn't have even come. They would have said, no, this is highly inadequate. So that's what I mean by some of the operational challenges that they have, arising from not having enough money to do everything you want to do. So if somebody just chooses to look at the process part of the decision, it looks very bad. But if you put context into why the decision has been made, you will understand why it is. And that is what, as a board, we are there to help them do. Again, your point about control. You know, when that is explained to us and the context is given, then we understand, then we say, well, yes, fine, you can go and get that bus because it's urgent. Subsequently, retrospectively, we can go and justify why this was done. And again, to your point about procurement, there is a requirement to have an annual procurement plan, I believe, in advance, that you give to GPPA. And I think GIA comply with that if they have major procurement to make, falling out of their budget, which again explains why some of these things were not anticipated. I hope it's yes?
But still, with regards to internal control is something that is of much importance to us with regards to our oversight functions, because it gives depth to whatever we're doing, and an efficient internal control unit in any institution renders it viable and fit for purpose. So that's why most of our questions are usually like to derive it from there. Still, with regards to the procurement aspect, we did saw that the managing director, I would like to first ask, what was the status of a proposed vehicle that was purchased or through part exchange? I would like to know what was the urgency for that purchase?
Thank you very much. The urgency is that the vehicle I was using had a major breakdown. Our engineers and the supplying company, tried to fix it. But what happened is this: every other 2 days, it will have a breakdown. Now, the maintenance cost on the vehicle was trying to go up. I said, look, I think the best thing is, can we get back to the supplier? When we get back to the supplier, we said that, no, we return this one and top it up and get a new one, so that the maintenance costs that we are almost continually spending on this old one, will stop. And along the way, what happened is this: an amount of money was budgeted for purchase of the managing director's vehicle, which was, I think, 4 million or 4.1 million. But by making this exchange,
because
yes, by making this exchange, there was a budgetary saving of 2 million that we save, as part of our budget. In fact, we had a very interesting debate with the auditors on this. Mr. Jara is here. I think later he will come on that issue. We said that, Mr. Jara, but if we carry out a transaction and that transaction actually saved 2 million, we don't think that is anything bad. But as my chair was saying, procedures are different. So we had a very interesting debate on this, and Mr. Jara, you can pick it from there. In our opinion, you acted faithfully and made a savings of 2 million, budgetary savings, and get something new. So, but for the auditors, we should park the old vehicle and buy a new one first. So instead of spending cash 2 million, we would have spent cash 4 million. This was the issue.
A follow-up question to that, because if you look at the auditors, they laid emphasis that their argument was like, you don't have any valuation of that vehicle. It was not valuated to know the actual plan. So, like if you go to this place, there was no independent valuation report to determine the fair value of the old vehicle. The value used
in the exchange was based on the record net book value, which is $1,493,333. So their argument is there was no valuation report.
My board chairman is a seasoned accountant. I think he can comment.
I think, Honorable Chair, I think the auditors are on point. From the perspective they're looking at it is that there may have been, and I underline the may, the possibility of a higher value. But I think both you and I know that the moment you drive a vehicle out of the garage here, even if it's brand new, you probably have lost 25% of value. So the way we looked at it was that in terms of assessing fair value, yes, there might have been a possibility that if you try to assess fair value, you might have gotten fair value higher than 1.4 million. But within the scheme of things, in their books, they have already made a saving of almost 2 million. In a context where, had the managing director chosen, he could have gone and procured a brand new vehicle. And then GIA will decide what to do with his existing vehicle, since it's an entitlement that he has budgetarily. So our perspective is that. Now, if you look at it as an independent, commercially minded person, you might say, I might have made more money if I had gone and valued it. That's a point taken. You know, you could have looked at it that way to say, oh, maybe you could have gotten 2 million and you might have done a better deal. But from their perspective as a management, they felt, well, I could have spent 4 million, I've not spent 4 million, I've spent 2 million instead. So I've already got a good deal. So if you wanted to be greedier, you could have said yes. So for me, the learning is that in the future, no matter what, ensure an external valuation before you trade.
I think that is important.
That's a point taken.
If that is done, probably if there is an external valuation, the price can be higher than so the profit they're talking about can be double or something else could be added on.
Certainly.
I think that is very important.
Certainly.
This is the dimension in which the auditors are concerned.
Certainly.
And it's part of their policy for them to proceed to follow every due process of procurement.
Certainly.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question with regards to that. I'm sorry for brushing you with regards to the last question. Why did it go through the normal procurement procedure with regards to the purchase of
we don't think getting an old one back to the supplier, getting a new one has nothing to do, has something to do with DBA again. We don't think if DBA have a particular.
You mean you don't think?
No, what I'm saying is that I don't think DBA has a particular regulation on that.
With regards to the compliance?
No, it's not about compliance. This one is a swap. It's not a normal, purchasing, procedure that we are doing.
MD, with all due respect, the vehicle is not a personal property, it belongs to the institution.
That's true.
Exactly. And there are procedures. Even if we are doing that, there should be procurement.
Exactly. Okay. It should
not be taken like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is the issue.
Okay.
Even if you are exchanging the way you did it, it should have undergone through the procurement process.
Okay, it's not.
And that's why it's seriously flagged.
I think he used the word
yeah, that's why it was seriously flagged by the auditors.
It's not a very risk. Honorable Chair, it's not in approving the accounts, the board did make note of the fact that independent of there being a budget, independent of it being a swap, it was a purchase. Because a new vehicle has come. The board took note of that. And we have had conversations with management to say, in future, even though in their minds and all the pressures they face, they acted because they thought they were saving money. But actually, the regulation is pretty clear. Procurement of this value is being done. You need to follow the procurement steps. And we have taken note and made note of that. And I don't think you will see something similar in the future. We accepted the fact that they were making money in terms of saving. We accepted the fact that they were abiding by their budget, which was pre-approved for the purchase. But over and above that, there is certainly a need to comply with the procurement regulations, independent of whatever saving or whatever pressure you are under. We take that point.
Yeah, my question regards the Hajj deposit. Being the depositors own the funds, why is GIA management using those funds?
Okay, I guess having the benefit of being an accountant sometimes helps. Now, during the pandemic, GIA were confronted with quite serious liquidity problems. There was no aircraft coming, they were selling no tickets. Now they had two options. One option was to increase their overdraft with Zenith Bank and service their expenses. The other option was to risk manage on the basis of their experience and knowledge to say how likely is it that pilgrims will come for their money. If they come for their money, GIA is in a position to refund them by using the overdraft. But to ensure that they don't add too much cost to the organization, rather than use the overdraft, they were using the Hajj account to carry out certain expenses. But if there was a need to replace it, they will take it from the overdraft and replace it. But if you take it from the overdraft, it's costing you 15%. And they did not want to do that. So they decided that we will carry out recurrent operational expenses through the Hajj. And these are issues like salaries and so on, which are statutory obligations they must do. So now that the situation has regularized and the Hajj came, all the pilgrims have gone, all their expenses have been made. In other words, they have replaced that money in full.
But do you think that is the correct way of doing it? Because
it is not the correct way of doing it.
Because if all those depositors had to ask for their money, I think you would be in a position to lose your credibility.
No, they would have paid. They will just draw the overdraft.
But that is not correct.
And also, we also anticipated when they were paid.
The only reason they did this was that it was during the COVID-19. In fact, subsequently, government gave them 15 million to 21 million to bridge the gap. Because these were, the options they had were very limited. It's either you don't pay your staff and have a revolution in your hands, or you look at the total liquidity you have and say, what is the less risky way to manage the situation? And the less risky way was to use the EcoBank account with high deposit funds. But they do have a credit line with Zenith Bank that they can draw to replace it. So they just used the money that did not cost them anything, as opposed to the money that would have cost them something. Now, the further question you can ask is that, does that saving then not belong to the pilgrims? If you wanted to be a purist, you can say that does that saving not, but that is a business activity they have carried out, because GIA don't do the Hajj to make money. And let me tell you how you can test that. If you now go and look at how much they have charged for the Hajj, GIA is charging $410,000. It is the cheapest rate that any pilgrim is paying. And that is in recognition of the fact that they were holding pilgrims' money for almost 2 years. So this whole scenario was well managed in a context that was very difficult. It was COVID-19, there was no money. You had money that you were holding for somebody. You also had money that you could borrow. So the question was, which is the best route to take? Now they've used the Hajj money, and the question I was throwing, that if you're a purist, you will ask, should the benefit not go to the pilgrims? Yes, that is why they're charging $421,000, as opposed to everybody else charging $470. they have recognized that we've held your money for 2 years. This is the benefit we are giving you back. If you come to us, you pay 421. 420 or 420. If you go anywhere else, you pay a bit more. So, in the overall scheme of things, I think it's a fair deal from our perspective.
Yes. Thank you very much for some of the answers. Well, as I may put it to you, the comfortness of the dealing that is done. This is a money that is owned by people who prepare to go for Hajj, very agreed. And now you use that. Instances came of pay, you went and borrow. If that is the case.
No. Let me explain that.
Wait, let me just put this. Because what happened is, this is a money of pilgrims that they are supposed to go for Hajj. You said, if I could quote you right, that either the same pay is done for salaries based on those contingency time. Either you borrow, or now you could use this money to regularize an in-house that may arise, like an if it's a strike or so, if those services are not paid. I'm looking at this angle whereby you could have gone for the second option than using the first option. Why? Because in code principle, it is on your money. The regulatory aspects. This is an account that is purely created for a particular event that didn't happen. The event didn't happen, you use it on the whole aspect of GIA. Then in the second thought, borrowed is made, as you said, that you have an account in EcoBank that you can also borrow. And in turn, it may charge interest. I am putting to you, when you do the borrowing of the second thought to refurbish the pay of this one, would they not still ask for the interest, or the interest is waived?
Okay. First, I think you missed the caveat.
Yes.
The caveat is that if everything was normal, they wouldn't have any need for those funds. They were confronted with, at the beginning of March, the airport closes. There is no flight. There is no income. They have nothing whatsoever. So you're faced with two decisions. Either you sack all the staff and close the organization, stop operating because you're not anticipating any revenue, or you make a judgment call. And the judgment call was that, look, Hajj is not happening this year, we know that, it's a fact. They've made an announcement that any pilgrim who wants your money, you can come back. And when you come back for your money, within 30 minutes, you will be refunded. Every pilgrim who came was refunded in 30 minutes. Now, you start a negotiation to say, can we have supplementary funds? And you're promised supplementary funds, but you don't know the amount. So that is the only money you know is coming. And the total money you know is coming is more than what you're holding. Now, it's time to pay salaries. So the decision you have to make is, can I pay salaries using this particular bank account and replenish it? I have two ways of replenishing it. If I'm giving supplementary funds, I will replenish it. If that doesn't work, I will replenish it using my facility. And they made the decision that we will pay using these funds and we will replenish it. And that is exactly what they have done. But I think the auditors, in fairness to them, are right to say, when you are giving somebody's resources to guard, that is what you do. Now, if everything was normal and there was no COVID, that is what they would do. That is what they do year in, year out. Now, going back to your point, in recognition of the fact that there were pilgrim funds that gave them benefits, they also returned that benefit in terms of the fare.
But I'm asking, in reforming that money from the bank, as the money is taken, would the bank not charge interest?
No, because all you are doing is paying back money for which you paid no interest from money you are not borrowing. Because now they have liquidity, their flights are coming, they're operating, they have supplementary income from government of 21 million. So the crisis we are now talking about is no longer the case now.
Now what I'm trying to arrive is...
Well, let me help you here. we have replenished the money without taking overdraft or loan from the bank.
Good. That's
We
what I
have,
wanted
we
to
have replenished it from our operations now, as the Honorable Chairman is saying. Situation is getting normal now, and we are getting revenue. So it is that revenue that we use to replenish back to the pilgrims' money.
Okay,
without taking any overdraft or loan from the bank.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Right. For clarification's sake, with respect to high deposit account, at first I want to believe that GIA have no right to touch this account. Isn't it?
Yes.
You have no right to touch this account. This is for the pilgrims. You don't have right to use this money to service your operation. You have your budget line from which your operation should be serviced. And there are guidelines as to where and what you need to do when you are constrained with respect to operational issues, as far as funding is concerned. But the high deposit account, GIA has no right to use this account irrespective of whatever issue arises. This account doesn't belong to you, and in fact it means you are spending outside your budget.
Honorable Member, I think hindsight is usually very beneficial. At the time when they were making this decision, it was a time when I don't think anybody was thinking straight. Because, this is March, COVID has struck. And everybody and everything has shut down, including the ministry to whom you need to go to have a conversation, has shut down. So you are confronted with that. And now a decision needs to be made. Do you not pay your staff, or do you pay your staff? Now, I take your point on board fully. Depositors' money that you're holding, you have no entitlement to. You cannot use. You should not use. If the circumstances were normal, they would not even consider it. That is why they have a separate account for it. But these were unusual circumstances. And the decision needed to be made. And they made an operational decision that the best thing we need to do is to use this money anticipatively. But we will refund it. We have the means to refund it. You've identified the source from which we will refund it. And that's what they did. But your point about them having no entitlement, them not being allowed to use it, is a valid point. And if it were now, I don't think they will do that. They will not even consider it. But you and I were here in March. I think many organizations were confronted with decisions that they wouldn't make now.
Mr. Chairman, as you rightly point out, we need this to save a situation whereby the company will not close, 400 people will lose their job and go and sit at home. So I think we also did for the interest of Gambians, as you people are sitting here for the interest of Gambians. So we did it, we did it consciously, looking at various options. And God help us, with our decision, we gradually moved and the company did not close, no staff was reduced, no staff was redundant, and Gambians maintained their employment. But alternatively, the company was going to close, and 401 staff were going home, not having job.
And addition, no program has come.
Yes. And secondly, also, management is also there to manage. We also calculate, and we calculate this. We know that when pilgrims were paying, they don't all pay the same day. So expectantly, they will not all come for their money the same day.
No, that was late escape.
Managing Director, you've taken the right decision using the wrong account.
Yeah.
You've taken the right decision using the wrong account.
In the interest of Gambians.
Using the wrong account.
In the interest of Gambians.
Who?
Gambians I'm talking about. The employees. Who are Gambians?
Excuse me. I want if anybody is taking the floor, you take permission from the chair. Let's start our direct conversation. We are here to better the lives of the Gambians and to promote the welfare of GIA, which is our sole obligation. We are here as an oversight institution, and these are the state-owned enterprises that are under our purview. We are here to enhance your progress, which is very important. So when we are talking, let us not be temperamental and make sure that we take permission from the chair to stop talking directly to one another. We only want to share our view and help us improve. It could be possible we have a solution to the problem, or some of you have a better idea which we can develop on. So that's the whole purpose of this engagement.
Right. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I want to ask a question with respect to the fund upon arrival and departure of passengers. The $20 that passengers pay, to which account is it going? And on which arrangement are people paying these monies?
I don't remember, that's under the purview of civil aviation.
In fact, I think our interventions need to be limited within the budgets. This, if we go there to verify the civil aviation controller, having an engagement with them, we can enter into this type of engagement.
No, I asked the question. Because we dealing with monies as far as GI is concerned. And within, okay, it would have been proper to reserve that for civil aviation and on which arrangement. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much, Chairman. I had two pertinent questions to ask about the Social Security Housing Finance Corporation payment and that of the payee for inconsistent payment of GRA. It's been brought to notice as per the reference on your management letter indication that the non-compliance regulation of payment to the Social Security Housing Finance Corporation of the employees and that of the GRA, it goes up to 10 months. I want to put it to the management and also in cognizance of this very serious implication. I am an employee in the company. My salary is paid. Benefits are paid within the months, but my statutory are not forthcoming. In regard of the taxation, that I should also pay tax in order for the recovery for the government to do its functionalities. What mechanism do you people put in place to make sure this replica of the defaulters of payment is addressed for the best interest of the staffs and also for the country at large? And again, is it concurrently happening now or it has been dealt immediately? And if it is so, we want proofs to see that there are no more areas between the Social Security and the GRA for to chair with your commission. If that is addressed now, we want to see proofs of those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. I will answer it in two parts. I'll answer the first part and I'll let them answer the part about whether it's happening still. It should not be happening still, and I'm sure it's not happening still. But again, I'll just take you back to the context, which was 2020. And actually, your question is a good question to ask, because this is the reverse of what they did on the salaries. If they decided to pay all these government agencies, they would have had to do exactly what they did with the salaries. And you'll be facing the same question the honorable member was asking, why did you use the hard money? So they were risk managing, and they were saying, well, this is a government agency, we can delay payments. However, should anybody need Social Security payments to be brought up to date because you are making a claim, they will do that immediately. So they were actually doing what the honorable member wanted them to do, not touch somebody else's money. But at the same time also not close the organization and sack people. So that's why, as a board, we had sympathy for them. They were in a very difficult position, and they were making difficult decisions. So I'm sure if you were in our shoes as a board, we would have done exactly what we've done. Try and understand their context and support them. But when everything is normal, I agree with both yourself and the previous member that you follow the rules. But these were unusual times. Now, in terms of whether it's still happening, I'll let them answer that.
Now that's an extremely sharp improvement. It's not happening like during the COVID era. Yes, myself and the finance director, almost every week we talk about it.
800,000 will go, 700,000 will go, things like that.
So, Chair, with your permission, if possible, they will also give us proofs because these are issues that are very vital, and we believe so. In as much as important as my salary, my status also is as important as my pay, because I have the right to query the SS Social Security that I want to check on my balance. It is my right. But if I check my balance, I realize that 5 months, 6 months, 7, 8, 10 months, nothing is inputted there. I have the right to check up with the management. So,
you know what we are doing during the COVID era?
Yes.
If, for example, Honorable Jiba retired, and now the Honorable Jiba has to go to Social Security, to claim, his benefit. All what is due on Honorable Jiba will be paid 100% to Social Security. So the Honorable Jiba will not go to Social Security, and Social Security will say, no, your money is not up to date. So it's like we are managing a very difficult situation, generating almost zero income, until at one point government had to come in to be paying our salaries.
So if I may ask in there, I am a retiree, before I opt for Social Security, knowing fully that maybe this month I'm going, the management will work on that, putting in place a mechanism to make sure my money reaches at that end before I go.
Yes.
In that regard, as you're putting it, where do you get that money to facilitate individually the pay? Instead of globalizing the staff general.
Money to be paid for one person, I think is far lesser than money paid for the entire general staff. So you alone, your contribution, no matter how difficult our situation may be, I think paying you single person's money will not be much of a problem compared to paying for 401 people at the same time.
And you also have the benefit of the bank being sympathetic and advancing an overdraft line and a freeze on loan, because they realized that this was a difficult situation and everybody had an interest in making sure GIA continues. Because when times are normal like they are now, you will get $78 million worth of deposits from them for hard money. So it's in the bank's interest to support them. So they will not have a problem making good small amounts like that.
So as you have said, sorry, Chair, you saying that of the SS, FH, Social Security. Now, what role do you play in that of your government and my government, as we are all taxpayers? Because cognizant of being retired, you do it individually. So in that of government, it is alluded about 10 months. So depriving the country or the government from earning a huge amount of money for 10 good months. What is your take in that?
The take is two things. You don't have money, you cannot pay this thing now, you close the company. You close the liquidation.
No, you're not understanding.
Honorable member, I understand, and my apologies, Chair, for not raising my hand. I take your point, and I mean, let's be frank about it. Yes, if we are holding 10 months worth of pensioners' money, they are losing 10 months worth of interest. That's the bottom line. That's the interest. That's the fact. Yes. I take your point. Social Security have a mechanism for dealing with that. They charge you a penalty. And they will then charge GIA, but these guys are good at negotiating that, I believe. So they handle that with Social Security. Social Security will charge a penalty. They have a mechanism. But I see your point. In the overall scheme of things, as a member of parliament, you're protecting the interests of the citizen, the interests of... So I take your point that yes, if you hold 10 months money worth of money, government is losing interest. You and I are losing interest. That is true. Social Security have a mechanism, they charge a penalty. Now, how they deal with it is an operational matter between this MD and Social Security's MD. We don't get involved. But you have a fair point.
Now, I'm flattening within the corridor of governance because you see this, that this is a government that you're to pay not only Social Security, the funders is also GRA.
Yes.
So in GRA being the revenue collector, in quotes, if this is repeating for other Ps, it could flatten other departments of not even having salaries.
That's a fair
and when there are underlying causes within Ps. So I believe so, as he has alluded, COVID issues, but I think in the high side, you could better implement C. And again, charges of penalty. If I'm to pay $100, I end up paying $110 for 400 staffs. That $10 is another cost intensive too.
It's a very fair point. Yes. We are taking note of this, but I can also add that in fact, to some extent, government was even sympathetic with us. That was why they gave us 21 million to keep the company in operation. So I think if we cannot pay the DRA, at that time, government will understand the payment. We are the ones now paying their salaries because of the difficult situation in which they are. So I don't think DRA is will have been anything serious.
Madam Chair, so in fact, what we did, not only the decision as it is, but we did from our end. We wrote to society, we wrote numerous letters, and we did receive response from them regards to us not conforming to the payment of Social Security pension funds. And then, we had some fruitful discussions, even though they know we should pay, but because of our situation at that time, they did have some good understanding.
But you can supply us with the evidence for it.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Chair. Let me thank the GIA. My own is not a policy issue. If you looked at the Gambia International Airline annual activity report on the travel agency, I will read. As an airline, flight operation is expected to be the core activity of the company. However, since its establishment, GIA has not exercised the full scope of its mandate in terms of flight operation. My concern here, because when whosoever have the thought, or whether it was an act that established the GIA, this was the baseline, then the GIA was established as a company. So if you are not operating from that time, from the establishment of GIA up to date, and then you are telling me that it's because of you have lost a lot of revenue in 2005. I don't know what was this loss, but then I think the chairman can help us, because he told us he was there for a long time. Maybe the losses of these revenues, you might know something about it. And then the other issue is about this. I can see the GIA, the loan, the Zenith Bank loan under the state aircraft. I can see a Zenith Bank borrowing Zenith Bank dollar. That is in December 2019, was it 42,425,000, and then it have decreased to 34,432,000. That's in December 2020. If you convert this 42,000 in 2019, even when you use the recent dollar rate, it is about 700 and something thousand US dollar, which is heat money. And then I don't know what was the reason actually this money is borrowed for. But if you go to 12.2 of the financial statement, you can also see there a loan of 2.2 million Zenith Bank. This one also a Zenith Bank for the construction of the GIA complex. I was just trying to reconcile these $2 account, and then I need an explanation.
I can answer the flight operations part and allow them to deal with the Zenith Bank part. I mean, the flight operations, you are right. It's a good thing that you are asking the question, and you are asking the right person. I was fortunate to be in GIA when we decided to fly some 30 years ago. And I think now sitting in the board, I'm very attentive when they bring me proposals to fly. Because flying is an expensive business. And you really have to be able to afford the process and the accompanying tasks that go with flying. When we flew, some 30 years ago, we bought two aircraft that we were flying with, in a context where we had excess liquidity, and that encouraged us to fly. But within 6 months, we were struggling. So what we have advised management to do is to look for a partnership or a joint venture. And we do it incrementally, so that we don't create any disruption. And that process is currently ongoing. There is a proposal on the table to explore the possibility of flying. But yes, it's the core mandate. And as a nation, it's also a source of pride to have a national flag carrier. So it's an ambition we have, but we're doing it pragmatically.
Okay, so referring back to page 17 on the issue of the $2.2 million that was contracted from Zenith Bank. This was contracted to construct the corporate complex. You see the new building at the airport. Yes, that was the loan that was used to construct. And the balance that you are reading from, that's the value of the balance analysis in our books. So it's like that's the current amount that is outstanding. That should be paid to the bank.
Okay, Chair. Yeah, honestly, MD and the chairman, I don't know how it's your company, but it seems that you have contract a lot of debt. For me, I don't know how they are GRA, how are you breathing? Because if you look at the amount of debt you contracted, if your company is having this amount of debt, I don't know how are you operating to make profit.
Again, we can say that it's historic, like the Zenith Bank loan that we have just talked about. Yes, it was contracted by previous management, but of course we know for a good place to get a corporate headquarters organization. So people come and go, but organization remain. So when you come in as a manager, it's your responsibility to defray those liabilities. But most of these liabilities are historical.
That's what I understand.
Yes, honorable member, I think you have a fair point.
I'm thinking of the sustainability of the company doing that.
Yes, when you look at the debt profile as it reads in the accounts, it's alarming. But most of these debts, apart from the Zenith Bank, that are not there. You don't have to worry. I don't think you need to pay. Like 65 million central bank, we will not pay. And all those other debts you are seeing, we will not take out money to pay. A solution will be negotiated. I don't know whether you were in the room when we were explaining where it came from. You know, but I think your fellow colleagues, if I'm right to say, Mr. Chair, we've given them the history. So I know, looking at it nominally, it's a concern, but they are not going to find 65 million today. I can assure you. And can I believe in Mr. Chair that your colleague will be updated by yourself?
Yeah, and I think that's not the point. I think we still have some questions that we want to exhaust.
Mr. Chair, on the financial statement, and equally a similar point on the activity report. Ticket sales on the activity report on 4.3, which says in 2020, ticket sales generated 0.190 million, indicating a 60% decrease in its corresponding figure of $0.513 million in 2019. And when it comes to the financial statement, it reads for ticket sales commission, 1,825,000 in 2020. Are we there?
Yes.
How much is the commission per ticket?
Let me come again. It's the finance guy with that massive.
The commission per ticket differs.
Okay.
Commission vary depending on the airline in English. Some airlines now are charging one commission, 1%. Some airlines you don't even get commission on that. So in commission we cannot say there's straight line commission for the airlines. Airlines their commission is paid.
Within a specific given time?
Period of time, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. And this one is given within 2020?
2020, yes. Not only 2020, airlines, year in, year out, their commissions will not be the same.
Hence, we're looking at report for 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, these commissions are commissions that are generated for ticket sales in 2020.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So, despite the fact that we have ticket or commission variances, and in some instances you will not even receive any commission, and you are carrying out an activity, free service.
No, not free service per se. Sometimes we have to use our own prerogatives to at least maybe some ticket sales, at least to ask something on those to get something. Like the airlines, those one giving us commissions. At least we have to get something on top of it.
But the industry language is surcharge. Yeah, we call it surcharge, where the airlines are giving 0% commission when we transact. We also, we also put something there that they call surcharge. So that surcharge is what comes to us as a revenue.
So, can you give me different variances in the commissions and within the period 2020? Can you please help me with that?
Yeah, for example, like as I was telling you, Air France before was 1 commission, now no more commission for Air France.
Air France?
Before was 1 commission, 1%.
1% commission.
Now no more commission. We have put airlines to like Morocco, they are giving us 9% commission, but now it has reduced.
To how much?
If I remember fully, it was maybe around 4 or 5 now.
Around?
4 to 5% commission. I can't remember fully the figure, but it has reduced.
From 9 to 4 or 5% commission?
Yes.
So those are the only two airlines?
No. I'm just giving an example.
Honorable Chair, no, I wanted to just acknowledge. I think I see where the honorable member is going. And yes, if you are in a context where you are not earning any commission, if you continue running, you will collapse. I see that. In fact, everywhere in the sector, airlines themselves are being undercut, and travel agencies are being wiped out. And the reason is that technology has made it so accessible that you can now go online and buy your ticket and go to no agency. So what airlines are doing, like the MD was saying, they are surviving on add-on services. And they are at liberty to charge for the add-on service. Now they need to invent what that add-on service is. Are they taking you to the airport? Are they booking your hotel? Are they doing an extra service for you? Over which they have monopoly. They can charge you what they want. But the airlines are basically saying, why do I pay you commission? When if Mr. Jata here wants to buy a ticket, he can go on my online platform and buy it. So why would I pay you commission for selling for me? So what these airlines are doing is they are creating alternative services to attract customers to themselves. So GIA is not just relying on commission to run the travel agency. They are doing other things that brings them money. Because if it's commission alone, you will not survive. But in terms of reporting in the accounts, I believe they need to analyze it by way of commission. That's their traditional way of reporting.
All right, thank you very much. I have a question to ask the board and management. Like we all know, GRS, governance and main source of income are from ground handling charges and hydro premiums. Year 2020 was COVID, we all know. the company saw about 119 million, almost or about 57.8 reduction in its ground handling revenue from 207.719 million in 2019 to 88.10 million in 2020. There is an inherent risk that without air traffic, GRA will not be able to raise revenue to pay its operations. As a board and management, how do you think you could avert this risk?
But, Honorable Member, I think I will say now what I was going to ask for permission from the chair to say at the end. And that is because I personally am very impressed with the quality of the committee and the probity with which you are dealing with issues. And it is on that basis, in answer to your question, I would say I have long been advocating that there needs to be an act of parliament to protect ground handling for the national carrier. Because it generates so much revenue. It is not an area where I think there should be private operators. Currently on passenger handling, there are private operators. And they are diluting our national revenue. You know, GIA does not have a monopoly on passenger handling. It has a monopoly on ground handling. Now, ground handling on an average year, if everything goes well, can generate easily $500 million. I think that is a national asset that needs to be preserved. But you are right, the moment this area was liberalized, GIA would be wiped out. So I have long been advocating that there needs to be an act of parliament that protects a national asset of ground handling, so that the national entity must do it.
Yes, it's good. I think as you're thinking in that line, management and the board think of something, initiate and put it right. Sure. Then now come to our aid, we see how best we can together work it. But these are issues that you never know. COVID can come again. You know, how to call it? Operations of Hajj may also halt. So if so doing, you may not be able to use that Hajj account if there is no money, for example. And again, if COVID also is in place, you cannot have money to do. Either ways, the staff will be laid off, or the institution may end up closing. But if you come with policies and programs that will ascertain the vibrantness of that GIA in grounding and other issues that will may be a policy, a guiding tool based on law, that will also see the progression of the industry. I think work with your management and the board to see a better way of handling it.
I will be the first to push the management for it. And just in recognition of your second point, Honorable Member, the Saudi government are heading in that direction. Because for Europe and America this year, all the travel agencies were wiped out. They asked everybody to apply on a platform called Mutawif for Hajj. So all the travel agencies, some of them are going bankrupt, some are collapsing, and there is nothing to say that they cannot transfer the same process here. So we were just having that conversation, I think, 5 minutes before coming in. Now, luckily, the system did not work, it collapsed for Europe and America, and there are a lot of complaints, so hopefully, but you are right, in terms of good planning, you need to think, if this happens, what do I do?
This high risk when it comes to bank reconciliation and bank reconciliation observation and from the external audit, which reads, during the audit of cash and bank, we observed that no reconciliation statements were prepared for the below bank accounts as they are said to be dormant. And on the management response, it has been responded that the two bank accounts, Access Bank Hajj and Cargo Complex Dollar account, has been closed, right?
And it also reads the cargo complex Dalasi account is subject a disagreement between the Ministry of Trade and GIA as who would claim the balance. I would suggest that we are provided with these bank statements. We can be provided with this bank statement. Access Bank had AC and that of Cargo Complex dollar account and Cargo Complex dollars accounts. Can we be provided with these bank statements? Can you provide them?
Yeah, we can provide. As of now, we've closed it. Because when you look at the 2020 accounts we prepared, they are not there, it's closed. It's only that one you mentioned that is there. Because as you said, it's subject to kind of a little bit of disagreement. But the other ones are closed totally. So we will provide.
The bank statement is very important.
Honorable Chair, with payables 4.7, the auditors did observe that on the review, payables listed below reveal that there have not been any movement in the account for the year 2019. So you have payables on the catering outstanding with all the figures that are available. So the recommend management should ensure that the creditors are paid on time in order to avoid potential litigation against Airline. But that is not still implemented. So I want the management to give an update up to today. What is the status of this? Why is it not implemented up to this time? On the management letter, yes.
Yeah, you know, this is cross departmental areas between GIA and other public enterprises.
Yes.
So the Ministry of Finance, they came up with a mechanism. They set up a committee that looks at these areas, and we were advised to bring our records, and we did reconcile. Before the COVID struck, we did start paying, because if you look at the balances from 2019, some of them there have been movements. But when the COVID struck, we did communicate. We sent a communication to the Ministry of Finance and the other PEs, and then we told them, you know, we are obliged to make payments of this as agreed at the meeting. But because of COVID, we cannot continue paying this. And this is communicated, sent to the Ministry of Finance, and it's understood. So that's what happened with regards to this. But if you look at the balances from 2019 going to 2020, there has been movements.
But can we be provided with the copies of those communications?
Yes, Chair. Okay. Actually, we are all speaking in different ways. We want to come to a common ground, I believe. It's also now we are appealing to the government through your August body, so the government can supervise GIA to buy tickets from us, so that our ticket sales volume can increase. Even if you don't buy all your tickets, but at least 50% of your sales of your ticket production from GIA, we believe. It's an appeal to you.
Our goal to do the advocacy is there, but let's first sanitize these reports, which are very, very important. Because if you want to attract donors to come on board, we must have a very clean picture in terms of this advancement framework. So as you said, the history is still helping us, and we need to work seriously to make sure that the other arm of us is to do the advocacy, and we can do that. I know probably some of our will be coming to your institution to see what obtains there, to have some discussion with regards to the progress of the agency. A lot of discussion will come on that as well.
Yes, I hereby move a motion for the EIA management and committee to stand out for stand down for a few minutes, you will be called on.
Second. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Turn off the system.